Have you ever had someone that you care about, but they're living in sin? They've got issues in their life. A person who really cares is going to lovingly confront them. And we see a lot of that with Paul to the Corinthian church, which was a mess. Today we're finishing 2 Corinthians, and we're in the 13th chapter. Just reading the first few verses, Paul says, "This will be my third visit to you." So he's been there several times. In our next sermon in the book of Acts on Sunday morning, we'll see his first visit when we were in Acts chapter 18. But he says, "I'm about to visit you for the third time." Verse 2, "I already gave you a warning when I was with you the second time, and now I repeat it while I am absent." He's repeating the warning by way of this letter. He says, on my return, I will not spare those who sinned earlier, or any of the others. He says, I will not spare. That's a Greek word that was actually used on the battlefield about sparing a life. So this is a battle, and when Christians are living in sin, it needs to be addressed, and Paul's doing everything he can to warn them about when I come, I don't want to have to deal with this, but I will. And he mentioned it at the very end of chapter 12. We can look at it briefly if you see some of the sins they were dealing with. Verse 20 of chapter 12, he said, "I'm afraid when I come, I may find some of you not as you ought to be. I fear there may be discord, jealousy, rage, selfish ambition, slander, gossip, arrogance, disorder." And then he mentions a few other things in the next verse. Verse 21, he says, "I'm afraid when I come again, my God will humble me before you, and I will be grieved over many who have sinned earlier and have not repented." And then he starts talking about sexual sin. "Have not repented of impurity, sexual sin, debauchery in which they have indulged." So Paul says, look, I've already talked to you about this, and if I have to come again and speak to you harshly, he said, I won't spare you. I won't hesitate, because holiness matters for a child of God. You see these sexual sins, and we've read about them in these two different chapters, two different letters to the Corinthians. We've seen some pretty graphic stuff that he has spelled out for us. But I'll just put it to you, show you, since I'm sitting by the fireplace. A fire burning in the fireplace is okay. Sex is okay, is given to us by God. It's a gift of God to be used between a man and a woman within the confines of marriage, within a fireplace. A fire is a beautiful thing, but if this log rolls out into the room, a fire outside of the fireplace is dangerous. And sometimes we think that preachers are always preaching against sex, as if it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, as long as it's within the confines, within the fireplace of marriage. It's when it gets outside of that there's trouble. So Paul tells them, if I have to, when I come again, I will deal with all these things. So now, talking again about this person in your life that's struggling in some area, maybe there's a sin that they've not repented, they've not changed. I will say this. In the very next book Paul wrote, Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, we see that when you do talk to someone about their sin, you do it with the spirit of gentleness. Chapter 6, verse 1 of Galatians says, "Brothers and sisters, if anyone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently." The word gently was a Greek word used to describe setting a broken bone. If someone broke their arm, you wouldn't do it in a rough way. You would set it gently. And so maybe during this devotion, you've thought about someone who you maybe ought to have a talk with. Have a talk with them. Don't shrink back. Paul certainly didn't. But when you do it with the spirit of gentleness and do it with the spirit of love. It's a Monday. I hope you're having a good one, and we'll see you again tomorrow starting a brand new book.